Welcome, my friends. Welcome to the Inspiring You Show. If we've met, I'm Henry. So, this is the March Energy Forecast 2026, and this will be followed by, for the All Access Inspiring You Patreon members, the Dowsing Energy session for the month that goes along with this. So, all the transmissions shared here are received directly through my Oversoul Sahariel, my soul aligned higher self Aurelia, and my assigned collective guidance light team, including the Arcturian frequency technicians, the Christed Earth Grid Keepers, Yeshua, Mary Magdalene, Thoth, Archangel Michael, Kali Alpha Sahariel, and the Spirit Doctor team, each attuned to pure source light and the reclamation of sovereign soul pathways. So, this is a resonance field, a stabilized architecture where your soul's true signal is held, recognized, and amplified without distortion. Whether you are listening live, receiving the replay, if you are in the Inspiring You All Access Patreon, or simply open to receiving the light transmission through presence, your field is already participating, always respecting free will. You're not arriving from the outside, you are not trying to enter something you missed. If your soul, your human said yes, you're already in registration. You are already legible, you're already known, and this space honors your sovereignty. Nothing is imposed, nothing is pushed. Only what is aligned becomes structural within your field. So, a bit about me. I walk the path of energy, intuitive, and multidimensional channel, supporting harmonic embodiment, crystalline coherence, and presence led structural light truth. So, I serve as a frequency architect, soul stream translator, and crystalline grid harmonizer. And so, with that, my friends, just to also let you know, if you are listening to the public version on the Inspiring You podcast or Inspiring You YouTube channel, you may hear me reference the crystalline dowsing and Reiki energy session that follows the forecast. That full multidimensional recalibration is available exclusively for the Inspiring You All Access Patreon members. If you feel called into the deeper work, the link will be in the show notes. So, with that, my friends, let us begin, and let us begin with a breath. So, inhale, allow the field to meet you exactly where you are, and then exhale, release the impulse to adjust your tone to be understood. So, again, inhale, exhale. And we're going to do one more inhale, exhale. All right. So let's talk about March 2026. March no longer speaks in the language of stabilization, it speaks in the language of recognition. Where February lived inside the mature light format, March is the first month where the external field begins to register what has stabilized within you. This is not the threshold itself, it is the breath before the threshold. The moment when recognition begins, but response has not yet formed. Nothing reorganizes yet, nothing restructures, nothing aligns yet. Instead, March opens the registration layer of the arc. The light format meets the external field without merging, without compensating, without collapsing, without adjusting tone to be legible. You're no longer performing coherence, or maybe you've let go of patterns and programs and you've noticed how less you are performing coherence and you are really in coherence. Your coherence is simply there, and the world begins to read that. This month shifts the nervous system out of seeking cues for reception. Neutrality becomes structural, not effortful. Contact becomes clearer because contradiction softens. Misinterpretation declines because the dual signal field loses momentum. So, where February stabilized your internal tone, March reveals how the tone appears in the external field. You're not trying to be understood. Reality begins to understand you anyway. This is the quiet bridge between internal stabilization and April's alignment arc, where the field begins reorganizing around what it now recognizes. So, with the March 2026 energy forecast, the overall theme is reality begins to register your true signal. And then the embodiment key is arc of pre threshold recognition from internal stabilization to external registration. So, this is the arc of field coherence recognition. So March then is not a month of becoming, it is a month of being recognized or beginning to be recognized, depending on where you are in your own process. So, where February invited you to live inside the matured light format, March introduces the moment when the world begins to read what has stabilized within you. This is not the threshold itself. It is the breath before the threshold, the quiet arc where recognition begins, but response has not yet taken shape. Nothing reorganizes yet, nothing restructures, nothing aligns yet. And it doesn't mean that things aren't aligning for you. It's just the new architecture that you've embodied. It takes a process in terms of you and then the outer world. So just to kind of make that discernment. And also to remember, it's not, we don't look at this in terms of there's a whole gray area that we understand about this process. And there's no like absolutist in regarding, understanding the language because it all depends on your relationship with your human, your soul, your oversoul, and where you are in terms of your own process. So, with that, then the opportunity that is presenting in March or whenever you come to this, because maybe in a couple months, this forecast will resonate for you. Because again, everybody has a different timetable. So now instead, March opens a new energetic function. The light format meets the external field without merging, without collapsing, without compensating, without adjusting itself to be understood. That does not mean, though, the human is 100% there. So just make that discernment too, because there might be still things that are coming up in the human and you're using tools to support. You're multidimensional. So this month teaches you how it feels when the field encounters your true signal without requiring translation. And that is something to ponder about in regard to, the external field meeting your true signal without you really requiring translation. Just kind of think back how often you may have had to feel like you've translated, your light truth. So, and also with this, then the nervous system may no longer be scanning, or maybe it's less scanning for how to be received. Also, the field no longer positions itself according to others, or maybe it's doing it less than. And then maybe two, neutrality is no longer performed, or maybe it's less than. Maybe neutrality is no longer performed and it's become structural. It may not happen all at once. It may come in different phases. And so, but what you want to do is, though, look to see what micro shifts there may have been that have been like, oh, wow, huh, that has been a beneficial growth point that I'm more light embodied. So you're not, and I say that because sometimes I feel like people think immediately the light's going to go on and poof, you're there, which, yes, you might have an awakening and wow, but there might also be with that awakening a whole deconstruction process with the human. So be kind for the human and use your tools to support as well. So with this then, you're not trying to be coherent. You are coherent. And for the first time, reality then really begins to like register that. So March is subtle by design. The shifts are precise, quiet, foundational, because recognition must stabilize before alignment can occur. And so, and this is really in regard to the outer world connection to your alignment. because you may be grounded and aligned. But what we're talking about is um, your light format now in connection to the external. So, just as February internalized the architecture, March begins to make that architecture more perceptible to the external field. So, this is a month where you may notice your tone is met with clearer recognition in certain interactions. Some people start responding more to the frequency you actually hold. Patterns of misinterpretation appear with less influence or resolve more quickly. That's also something to look at, like and understand. Wow, you can have patterns of misinterpretation in terms of your own frequency, maybe being misinterpreted depending on if there's patterns and programs that have been running or if there's been like a dual signal, which we'll get into a little bit later on. And there's also could be remnants of what I just mentioned, mixed signaling, which may quiet as older broadcasts lose relevance. So remnants of mixed signaling quiet as older broadcasts lose relevance. So the external field begins registering your stabilized tone with increasing clarity, even if its response has not yet taken form. So you may notice yourself explain, you may notice you're not explaining yourself as much. You may notice you're not adjusting your tone for clarity. You may notice you're not reaching for validation to confirm what you already know. You may notice you're not absorbing others' emotional fields the way you once did. And that also could be in relationship to space weather or solar flares, things like that, where you still have your sensitivity, your intuition, yet you're not as deeply impacted where it just felt not so great. You may notice like, wow, I'm still getting the information, but I'm not feeling as terrible as maybe I once did. And so you just want to notice that because that's in terms of your progression, in terms of light and physical form. So again, then with this, it's not because you're withdrawing, but because your structure is finally holding its own shape in contact. Your light and physical form is really holding its own shape in contact. So March reveals how your coherence then appears to the external world, how it lands, resonates, and becomes readable. You're not trying to be understood. Reality is quietly starting to understand you. And that's something also to ponder about, like thinking about how much you've tried to be understood. And yet, oh, it's not about trying to be understood. It's allowing reality to start understanding you in terms of, your frequency, your tone. So, this is the beginning of the bridge between what you stabilized internally and how the world begins to register that stability externally. The outer field must register your stabilized architecture in March before it can reorganize around you in April. It is the registration layer of the arc, a month where the light format is noticed, not interpreted, beginning to be registered. So your tone then stands on its own. Your signal becomes clear, your field becomes legible. And that legibility is the precursor to the alignment that follows. So then how this connects, that's the overall theme, and then how this connects to the 9 themes. And so again, with this then, just to remind you, the overall theme is reality begins to register your true signal. And so that connects then to the 9 themes of March 2026. This month's theme is under the Harmonic umbrella for all 9 themes. Each theme describes a different way the stabilized light format begins to be registered by the external field. These are not new constructions. They're early expressions of a coherence becoming perceptible. Rather than building something additional, the March themes reveal how life subtly shifts when the world starts to sense your true tone. Some themes illuminate how contact changes as the field begins learning your signal. Others show how your system relates differently when it's no longer scanning for orientation. Some themes highlight the softening of old patterns, not as finality, but as signs of reduced momentum. And together, these themes are not separate teachings, they are facets of a single lived structure becoming externally legible. So think of the nine themes as functional expressions rather than sequential steps. Registration points, early signs of the field noticing what's stable, resonance surfaces, places where others begin responding more to your actual tone, clearing pathways, patterns appearing with less force as older broadcasts quiet, stability markers, moments where neutrality arises naturally through structure. Recognition thresholds, subtle shifts where misinterpretation begins losing influence. So nothing new is being initiated, nothing new. So nothing new is being initiated, nothing is being improved or adjusted. What has already stabilized is simply becoming more detectable. This is why the March themes move through contact, perception, quiet shifts, and relational fields. They do not ask you to project coherence. They reveal how coherence begins organizing how the world perceives you. March is the month where the soul does not announce itself, it becomes readable. You are standing in the space where registration begins to occur. March is the month where your architecture does not shift, the field awareness begins to. So that brings us to March's 2026 theme one, the quiet emergence of signal, when the field begins registering your stabilized tone. So, with that, then, in the Inspiring You All Access Patreon, there will be additional information in regard to the subline, harmonic, function arc, soul format embodiment. I'm not going to share it here just for time efficiency, but the full transcript of my receiving of the download from the guides will be on the Inspiring You All Access. And that's one of the paid membership tiers. All right. So, theme one, quiet emergency of signal. When the field begins registering your stabilized tone, you're not announcing anything. You're not projecting anything. You're not clarifying anything. You're simply being read. And with that, it's at this time, it's not loudly, it's not dramatically, it's not fully, but accurately enough for the first time. So, theme one opens March with a subtle but unmistakable shift. Your stabilized tone begins to be recognized by the external field, not interpreted, not reacted to, not mirrored back, simply registered. This is the earliest layer of recognition before understanding, before response, before coherence is reflected back to you. Recognition precedes response, registration precedes relationship, clarity precedes engagement. You're not entering March. March. It's about you starting to become readable. It's the moment with this, then, that it's the moment when what has stabilized internally becomes quietly perceptible externally. Not to every person, maybe, not to every environment, maybe, but consistently enough that you start to notice that it is unmistakable. So, why does that matter now? So, in February, the work was even more inward. The light format stabilized, tone steadied. The body learned or is learning to not to be scanning in terms of non-beneficial survivals patterns and programs, or in terms of like constantly being in hypervigilance. It's letting go of these non-beneficial patterns and programs. It doesn't mean that you're not going to still have these tools available to you. If it's beneficial, you will. But the challenge is that in some ways the human has been patternized in these non-beneficial patterns and programs to constantly having like the shoulders up, looking around, making sure that you're safe when you are safe, and that human might not be able to relax. So in February, we were working with this, and coherence became a lot more self-referencing. You are beginning to even more so live inside your light format. And now with March, March is then the first outward shift occurs. The world begins to read what you've stabilized, not clearly, not universally, but accurately enough to matter. This is not expression, this is registration. And so that's also something to understand. It's registration. It's not validation, it's perception. It's not engagement, it's recognition. Tone is held. And where capacity exists, tone is read. And so, how this might feel for the human. You may begin to notice someone responds to you with unusual steadiness as if they felt something stable. Conversations slip into ease without effort. You speak less, yet more is understood. You may notice you have to do less to clarify or no longer have to clarify who you are. Because remember, tone is held, right? Old distortion fields may not attach as easily, or maybe they fall away easier. People pause before reacting, they may feel something different. None of this is dramatic. It's quiet, subtle, and cumulative. And that's why, like, really taking time to go inward and be like, wait, what is different? Because it can be really subtle. So, with this, then it's about then your signal is sensed without projection, possibly. Your tone is felt without output. Your stability is registered without performance, which means then it's less efforted for you. The world begins to reorganize around your presence gently. It's not fully consistent yet. There's some inconsistency, but it's undeniable. So energetically speaking, then for this, it's about you're in the early recognition field. This theme includes the first harmonic of the March arc, recognition without response. So you might experience softened contradiction, less mixed signals, a decline in emotional absorption, clearer boundaries without effort, less energetic noise in the relational spaces, a sense that your presence lands more cleanly, more neutrality around you, less pull to merge or adapt. This doesn't mean, again, everyone perceives you accurately. It just means your signal is readable and capacity determines reception. You're not responsible for the reception. You are simply holding the tone that now can be registered. So here's an example. You enter a room and you don't brace, you don't prepare, you don't manage your presence. You simply stand there, and instead of feeling the room press in, something else happens. The field pauses, it adjusts, it takes you in. Not in a dramatic way, in a way that the system recognizes a stable point. No projection, no management, no explanation. Just a quiet registration of what is already true. You do nothing, your stabilization did everything. So then with this, then how this theme serves as a foundation for March. March is not about visibility, it's about readability. The overall theme describes the environment, and theme one describes the first structural movement inside it. So, theme one establishes the foundational mechanic. Stabilized tone becomes perceptible. And then every subsequent theme builds from this. And so there will be more information about that on the, again, in the all access. But basically, this theme asks, can you allow yourself to be read without managing how? That's right. Can you release the impulse to explain your coherence? Can you trust the tone, that tone stability creates its own recognition field? Can you rest in being registered, not in being understood? So, yeah, that's another one. Can you rest in being registered and possibly not in being understood yet? You don't make recognition happen. Recognition is the natural outcome of coherence. So theme one is the moment coherence becomes visible. So with that, on the all access, I will have these questions up. And so now we're going to move into theme two. Theme two is shifting absorption patterns. External field engages you differently. So you're not absorbing what is not yours possibly anymore or less. You're doing it less. Not because not because you're protecting yourself, not because you're doing better boundaries, but because your tone has stabilized enough that external fields cannot enter in the old way. So this theme is subtle but life changing. And take a moment to think about how much you may have absorbed in your life of what possibly hasn't been yours. And so, again, this theme is shifting absorption patterns. External fields engage you differently. And that's why this theme is subtle but life changing. So, where you once merged by default, softened your field to keep peace, collapsed in the presence of stronger possible signals, took on emotions that weren't yours, became the stabilizer in relational dynamics. And then in the subsequent effects afterwards, you may have felt really exhausted, depleted, and just run down by how much you are overworking or overgiving in relational spaces. So March introduces a different internal sensation. External fields don't land the same way. They don't press in as much, they don't penetrate, they don't override. And they may have completed that process, or you are maybe in the process still where it doesn't press in as much, doesn't penetrate as much, it doesn't override. And so for you, just notice where you are. And again, it's not because you're resisting, it's not because you're guarding, but because your internal architecture finally has enough coherence to hold without absorbing. This is not resistance, it's capacity. And so, for me, I definitely have noticed the shift in regard to space weather and solar flares and things like that, where before my human was really affected by it. Now I'm like, I have the awareness of it, I have the intuition. I am just not physically as like affected by it. And let me tell you, it feels incredible. It doesn't mean that I'm not having moments still. I'm not going down as much as I used to, where it just sometimes I'd all of a sudden have to take like a 3 hour nap during the day. And there's a certain feeling that I would get with like solar flares and things like that, where it just did not feel great in the body. And so now I'm still getting the information. I'm still highly sensitive to understanding, but I'm having a different response. And it really is because of, your shifting absorption patterns. External fields engage you differently. And I'm using the example of space weather, but you can use like any example. So the internal shift that you may feel is a space inside the body where collapse used to happen, emotions approaching but not entering, the world around you feeling quieter, less internal reactivity, less needing to manage others' energy, a widening of the field behind the sternum, a sense that I'm here and I'm not taking this on. And you can say that in with a mindfulness way too, in terms of compassion for self and others. And this is not disassociation. It is non-merging coherence is what the guides call it. So the guides say absorption dissolves because the interference signal declines. The survival based signal is weakening, and the stabilized signal, your soul signal expressed through tone, is strengthening. This creates a new ratio inside the field. When the secondary signal once pulled others in and once pulled you into others, the stabilized tone begins to hold center, which it's really interesting in terms of like understanding how you possibly can have mixed signals, and that secondary signal could be running the show more so than your actual like tone in terms of your embodied soul tone. So energetically speaking, declining interference. Interference used to be emotional tone entering without your permission, energetic fields collapsing into yours, relational expectations shaping your nervous system, others' needs becoming your stabilizing responsibility. Now, the guides say interference declines because coherence increases. Nothing absolute, nothing overnight, but pathways of old emerging patterns weaken. Fields that once pressed in the now soften. Relational contact feels more neutral. Emotional tone moves around you instead of through you. Your system does not template onto others as easily. Empathy shifts from merging to witnessing. And so this is an early stage of non merging stability. It's a March hallmark. So, what this looks like in daily life, you might notice someone's frustration doesn't enter your chest. You can sit near a dysregulated person without collapsing inward. You can feel present but not entangled. You no longer fix the energy in the room. You stop pre adjusting your tone to manage someone else's reaction. Conversations that were historically draining now remain neutral. Your system returns to baseline faster because less enters. This is not armor. This is your light architecture. This is what last year, in terms of the way of becoming, we were clearing and bringing in that new light architecture. So absorption patterns then shift, not because you've changed your behavior, but because your tone no longer makes space for what isn't yours. So then this is from the Oversoul Council. You're not meant to stabilize others. You're meant to hold your tone. Your tone stabilizes. Others no longer enter through the openings created by uncertainty, urgency, or self abandonment. This is the end of absorption as identity. And this is the beginning of coherence as boundary. That's the end of the message. So, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to still be compassionate or mindful. You'll just have healthy boundaries in regarding all of this, and you'll be able to maintain in your coherence. And then, so with this, then, absorption was never empathy. It was the nervous system attempting to anticipate, prevent collapse, avoid conflict, merge to stay safe, read the room to survive. With that, though, now the nervous system is letting go of or maybe no longer scans. Therefore, it does not absorb. So, this is the first month, maybe in your lifetime, that this exact mechanic is available. I have definitely noticed the difference in this in regarding my nervous system. All right. So, with this, then, living from that declining and clearing of these non beneficial patterns and programs of essentially absorption. So, how theme two kind of moves through your lived experience. You are possibly no longer default to merging. Contact does not equal collapse, maybe anymore or less than. You are no longer becoming the emotional regulator in the room. Your body doesn't reach out for other signals, or maybe less, it does it less. You no longer mistake others' tone for your tone. The signals stay separate. You no longer carry home others' energy. The field does not take it in. You no longer confuse empathy with absorption. You feel with, not as, and you are not drained by interpersonal dynamics that once overwhelmed you, not because they changed, but because you stabilized. So with that, then, with this theme, it asks you, can you allow others' fields to move around you without entering you? Can you trust that neutrality forms when nothing is pulling you out of yourself? Can you recognize that less absorption is not disconnection, it's coherence? So take some time to ponder these questions. Your work is not to hold the boundary, your work is to let your field remain undisturbed. That is really in terms of light and physical form. Okay, so theme three now. Increasing clarity of interpretation, the field reads your frequency with greater accuracy. So, March introduces the first subtle increase in the fidelity of how you are read in the world. Not full clarity, not full recognition, not perfect understanding. But fewer assumptions, possibly, fewer distortions, possibly, fewer patterned projections, possibly. This theme marks the moment when your stabilized tone begins to be registered as it is, rather than through the filters others once relied on. Your past, their present, your past, their past, your old survival signal, non beneficial survival based signal, their expectations, your former patterns, their unconscious templates. It's the beginning of accurate reading, even if subtle, partial, or intimate or intermittent. You're not being understood, you're being misunderstood less. So that's something to understand, right? You're not being understood. You are being misunderstood less. And the guides are really clear on this. Interpretation is not clarity. Interpretation is the decline of distortion. Interpretation is the phase where the world begins reading you with fewer distortions, but not yet with full clarity. Interpretation is not clarity. Clarity is direct recognition. Interpretation is the early stage where misreading declines, allowing your tone to be received with greater accuracy, but not yet fully or consistently. Interpretation and how it means for this theme is not distortion, not clarity, the in between, the beginning of accuracy, the soft unwinding of old projections, the early phase of right relationship with your tone. That's why theme 3 sits exactly where it does in March. Theme 1 is recognition, theme 2, non absorption, theme 3 is interpretation becomes more accurate. Interpretation becomes possible because your non beneficial survival based signal is quieter, your tone is stable, your field is more coherent, your expression is starting to become longer. Your expression is starting to become no longer mixed. The external field has less distortion to attach to. I'll also say, too, if you want to know some of these words and the definitions of, in the Inspiring You Patreon, this is free for everyone. I put out a schedule as well as the March energy forecast with the energy forecast each month. And there is a ton of information there, and there's a ton of definitions in this new one. It is pinned in the Inspiring You Patreon at the top. Anyone can go and read it. And if you want to receive any updates, there is also a free component. You can sign up. But a lot of these, if you're wondering about, wait, what is non-beneficial survival based signal? Well, you can have like a dual signal in regard to our experience here. You could have your actual true tone. We're talking about the embodiment of the soul tone in the human, but you also can have a non-beneficial survival based signal that the outer world, in terms of the external, may be reading that as opposed to your actual true soul tone. Yes. And that's why these clearings, the energy work is so important right now. And that's why, in terms of you look of like when energy work really just came into the mainstream a lot more, it's because we have these aspects that need to clear so that way the true soul tone can be read, not only by the human, but also by the external. Okay, so definitely if you're interested in some of the words that I'm using and you're like, wait, what? Go ahead to the Inspiring You Patreon. The link will be in the show notes and go check out that pinned one. It says schedule, but it also has the March energy forecast and a ton of definition and information in there that can be supportive, and also has the classes some of the classes that I'm offering this month in the Meditate with Me and the All Access parts of the Patreon. All right. So interpretation becomes possible because, again, your non-beta survival based signal is quieter, your tone is stable, your field is more coherent, your expression is starting to become no longer mixed, and the external field has less distortion to attach to. So basically, to sum it up, interpretation is the transitional stage where distortion loosens enough for your tone to be read more accurately. So this is the month where the world stops filling in the blanks with outdated versions of you. Fewer people read you through their wounds. Fewer relational fields distort your intention. Fewer environments activate old roles. Fewer situations mislabel your tone. So the internal mechanic is your tone stabilizes, signal becomes readable. Interpretation adjusts around stabilized tone, which means interpretation reorganizes itself as misinterpretation declines. Not because you explain more, not because you communicate better, not because you try, but because misinterpretation declines as fidelity increases. So the internal felt sense is you may notice people hear what you meant, not what they feared. You explain less and feel less pressure to clarify. Conversations feel smoother without added effort. The emotional tone of interactions become more neutral. Your presence lands in others without immediate distortion. Others pause before reacting. They're listening differently. You feel less drained by having to re-explain who you are. It's not perfect though, but it is cleaner. And energetically speaking, reduction of misinterpretation. Misinterpretation once came from your unstable signal, their unstable signal. Because because they have a dual signal possibly happen as well, right? Depending on where they are in their relationship to their own clearing work and recalibration. And so misinterpretation came from also mutual hypervigilance, past versions of you acting as the reference point, emotional mimicry distorting your tone, survival patterns making you more readable as threat, need, or rescuer. That's another one to pause on and think about. Others' projections filling in gaps your field couldn't hold. And now your field is clearer, your tone stabilizes, distortions has less material to attach to. So Oversoul Sahariel shares interpretation reorganizes itself when fidelity increases. The clearer your tone, the less space distortion has to land because it's light filling in the spaces, right? All right. So then it's not that others suddenly get you, it's that their systems have less room for misreading you. Interpretation is being recalibrated. So, what this looks like in lived reality, you might see someone asking a clarifying question instead of assuming. A historically reactive person responding with nuance. A dynamic that once escalated now stabilizing quickly, miscommunication resolving faster, less need to track how you're being perceived, people meeting your words at face value, fewer emotional entanglements rooted in misunderstanding, you being seen more neutrally with less projection. These are the first signs of dimensional listening. The world learning your frequency. So, which also too, like dimensional listening, that's something interesting to think about. And then here's from the Oversoul Council. Interpretation once shaped your reality. Now interpretation softens because your field no longer broadcasts mixed signals or is letting go of broadcasting mixed signals. You're not being read perfectly. You're being read more clearly. So that's the message. So then with this, this theme is not about recognition, theme one, and it's not about non-merging, theme two. This theme is about how others make sense of you once your tone stops wobbling. Your tone is not louder, it's steadier, therefore more intelligible. Your words are not clearer, your field is. Your presence is not more forceful, your signal is less confused. It's clearer. So living from increased interpretive clarity. Here's how this theme moves in real time. You speak naturally, others follow. You act from tone, others interpret more accurately. You no longer correct misreadings, they decline on their own. Boundaries become respected with less explanation. You stop being cast in old roles. People respond to the present version of you, not the past. That's also something interesting to think about. Something that I've thought about a long time, how people can respond to the past you, not the present. And now this like makes so much more sense of like why. It is something I've contemplated often, how like, wait, wow, somebody's actually responding to like a real old version of me and they can't see the me now. And then communication feels lighter, cleaner, less charged. And this is the dissolution of misinterpretation and the emergence of interpretive fidelity. So, with this, then, these are the questions that you can ask for this theme. Can you allow others to read you more accurately without managing how? Can you trust that misinterpretation declines as your tone stabilizes? Can you release the impulse to clarify what coherence already communicates? Your work is not to shape perception. Your work is to let interpretation reorganize around your stabilized tone. And then this brings us to theme number 4: growing neutral stability. Interactions hold without pulling you out of light format. So, this theme 4 introduces the lived experience of something you've been moving toward for years: contact without collapse, engagement without merging, presence without managing. Neutrality is no longer something your nervous system works to maintain. It arises because your field is no longer destabilized by external tone. Or maybe your nervous system is, you might not fully be there yet, but you notice that you are making shifts. So again, neutrality is no longer something your nervous system works to maintain, or maybe you've noticed that it's less for you to maintain. And it's not because you're stronger, it's not because you're better regulated, not because you're using all the tools, but because your architecture is stable enough that contact does not reorganize you. This has been another question of mine for years. How do you maintain stable? Like how? So this is like this energy forecast has like brought in so many answers for me that I have wondered about for years. So your architecture is stable enough that contact does not reorganize you. This is the shift from performed neutrality to structural neutrality. And this doesn't mean like you're numb. It just means you're in your coherence and you're in that like divine neutrality where you're still present, you're mindful, you're understanding what's happening, but you are not getting caught in like the what's happening in the other fields that's affecting you negatively, especially you're human. So what this means energetically: neutrality becomes a natural output of coherence. It's not an act, it is a beneficial consequence, right? So this is the moment when you do not lose yourself in someone else's emotional field. You do not shift tone to match the room. You do not collapse in old relational roles. You do not brace or prepare ahead of contact. You do not track another person's state for safety. You do not interpret their energy as instruction. You do not leave your tone to manage theirs. Neutrality stops being something you hold and becomes something that holds you. So then what this feels like in March: you may notice you stay in your body while listening. Your edges stay intact during emotional conversations. You feel someone's discomfort without absorbing it. You no longer self adjust to maintain harmony. You don't get pulled into the energetic gravity of others. You stop monitoring your impact. You speak from center rather than from adaptation. Your field does not contract to avoid conflict. You remain you even when others wobble. This is not disengagement. This is non reactive presence. So, March makes this possible because your signal is consistent, stabilized, unfragmented, and internally referenced. Therefore, it no longer needs to reorganize itself around the external field. Remember, though, it doesn't mean, even though I'm sharing this as like your signal is consistent, stabilized, unfragmented, it doesn't mean, though, the human doesn't have aspects of clearing so that your signal can be these things. So that's where you have to take responsibility and accountability of like, if you hear this and you say, yes, I would like that, then you have to do possibly the work to be able to allow this to be embodied. So there might be clearings, there might be realizations that need to happen. And that's your work of this. This isn't something where you're not, you are a participant in this. So this is an energy forecast though, but it's not like, wow, it's just gonna be there for you. You are here in a body participating in this humaning. So by that very act, what role do you have to play if this is something that you're saying that, yes, I would like? Well, there might be some sort of a clearing. There might also be habits that you have to catch yourself in to then, retrain in terms of the human. There might be neural pathways that you have to, okay, that once worked for me there, but now I'm going to retrain the brain. There might be work for you to do. And so just know that for me, these have been things that for me, I'm like, how can I have just a better quality of life here on earth, even as I'm so incredibly highly sensitive, even as like somebody who has like been, I've said I'm an intuitive empath, and things like that. Like, how can I have a better quality of life here with understanding these things about myself and then taking certain steps to support really without knowing sometimes how it's going to like play out and having these questions, and now some of my questions are really coming into fruition. And I also then in my own embodiment, I do feel the difference of having done just the past work and continuously using the tools. All right, so the mechanics behind neutrality. Perform neutrality comes from and can come from emotional survival strategies, hypervigilance, overcorrecting one's tone, trying to manage harmony, people pleasing, past trauma dynamics, mimicking neutrality to avoid conflict, regulating oneself into stillness. That was an interesting one. Structural neutrality comes from stable tone, reduced internal wobble, decreased misinterpretation, non absorption of external fields, coherence is architecture, clarity of boundary, reduction of survival signal. Structural neutrality means nothing external reorganizes you before you respond. There is a space between stimulus and response, not because you created space, but because your field holds it automatically. And so with that, then, you know, just know this is from Oversoul Sahariel. Neutrality is what emerges when nothing external has the authority to reorganize your field. And then this is from the Oversoul stream. Neutrality becomes the consequence of coherence. You remain in the architecture you've built. Others move around you without entering you. Stability is no longer a state you manage, it is the environment you inhabit. So that's the end of that message. So theme 4 is quiet, but it does not require performance. It simply asks you to notice, where am I no longer leaving myself? Where does contact no longer displace me? Where's neutrality? And that's that structural neutrality really beginning to live within me. So, and here are some other questions then. Can you allow neutrality, that structural neutrality, to emerge without trying to hold it? Can you trust the stability is now a natural output of coherence? Can you recognize that less reactivity is not withdrawal, it is alignment? Your work is not to manage your center. Your work is to remain in the coherence that no longer moves when others do. So that then brings us to theme 5. Theme 5 is ongoing dissolution of non-beneficial echo fields. Old feedback loops continue to lose momentum. So the core of this theme then, March carries the unmistakable sensation of old patterns possibly returning, but without power or without less power. It's not as tests, it's not as loops, it's not as reactivations, but as echoes with nowhere to land. These echoes show up because they used to be part of your field's architecture. This is the old architecture. Your system once responded to them automatically. They were historically reinforced through repetition, and there might be some habits attached to them. External reality mirrored them back to you. your survival signal made them relevant. That's why it's so important to understand about the mixed signals and to understand how you could have a non-beneficial survival signal, and it may be diluting or affecting your ability for your aspect of your real soul tone to be reverberating towards the outer field. So, and that also can affect a lot of things in regard to your relationship with abundance and prosperity, and, and obviously just in conversations with people, because they could be connecting to that in terms of a survival tone as opposed to your real soul tone. But now there's nothing. So with this theme in terms of ongoing dissolution of non-beneficial echo fields, old feedback loops continue to lose momentum. So the concept of this then is eventually there's nothing in your field that can sustain them. Like the echo appears, but the resonance is gone. There's a clearing that happened. And now it's just kind of like a last bit of, kind of like if there's some dust that is being cleared out, so that way you're in completion of them. And Oversoul Sariel calls this like the weakening of old mirrors. Old reflections no longer reflect accurately because your stabilized tone is no longer the version of you they belong to. And then also just to kind of understand why echoes can still appear. And this is, we're talking about non-beneficial echoes. It's not because you're looping. It's not because, but it does feel like sometimes you're looping. But the guides say it's not because you're looping. It's not because something isn't healed. It's not because of a lesson. It's simply this. Echo fields can persist until they run out of momentum. Momentum is not emotional. Momentum is energetic memory. Energetic memory. So that's something to really understand too, because I think sometimes, we can think, oh my gosh, why is this happening to me again? Oh my God, I'm in it again. But if you understand that it's energetic memory and it came up, you acknowledge it, allow it to clear out, the dust bunny to clear out so that you're complete, that will make a difference in regard to your human. So with this though, you may still see like old relational triggers, old insecurities, outdated self-concepts. You might also see like former roles, ancestral echoes. There could be also some past life echoes, internalized projections, emotional patterns that once defined you, dynamics that used to collapse your field, but now they appear without force. They don't take hold because your frequency no longer feeds them. This is dissolution. This is the clearing. It's not reoccurrence. So the felt sense in March, you may notice something that once hit like a wave now feels like a faint tap. Emotional charges flare, but briefly, then they evaporate. Old thoughts arise, but they don't feel believable. That's where things start shifting. Familiar fears lack their former intensity. Former patterns don't catch in the body. Dynamics that used to activate you now feel irrelevant. A sense of I remember reacting to this, but I'm not reacting. Reduced internal commentary. Faster return to your stabilized tone. Less investment in outcomes that once felt defining. This is the weakening of old mirrors. You recognize the shape of the non-beneficial echo, but have no resonance with its meaning. So then the energetic mechanics of dissolution is non-beneficial echo fields. This is important to understand. Non-beneficial echo fields survive by resonance, repetition, emotional charge, internalized identity, survival-based relevance, external reinforcement. All six weaken in March because your stabilized tone removes the hook they once attached to. But remember, this is where the human comes in, and you have to actually do the work, because like you can't just listen to this and be like, oh yeah, I want that to happen, and not sit down with the human to see what's being called for self-realization to then clear and shift. That's like your work and your accountability in regard to your human and your relationship to your soul and your oversoul and your guide team. Ask your guide team to help you. So then the Oversoul Council describes it this way. The echo remains for a time, but the chamber it resounded in no longer exists. And this is why patterns fade, roles collapse, projections lose impact, internal narratives quiet, emotional cycles resolve faster. It's not that the old loops are fully gone, they're simply no longer fed. This is not relapse, it's decay. One of the clearest lines for this theme is non-beneficial echo is not the pattern. Echo is the absence of the pattern's relevance. You're not returning to old dynamics. You're watching their final movements. The pattern is not reactivating. Its momentum is unwinding. So that's where also doing dowsing clearings can help you, because you can support clearing in kind of energetic residue and things like that in regard to some of these non-beneficial echoes. Okay, so with this then, this is from Oversoul Sahariel. Do not mistake memory for momentum. What returns in March has no authority. It's an echo of what once organized you. It cannot hold, it cannot shape you, it cannot define the field. You're meeting the shadows of patterns already dissolved. So let the echo pass. It's the sound of completion. So here are some questions that you can ask for this theme. Can you let old patterns appear without assuming they still belong to you? Can you recognize the echo without feeding it meaning? Can you trust the absence of resonance? It is the sign of dissolution. Your work is not to stop the echo. Your work is to let its lack of momentum show you what has already ended. Here is theme number 6 now. The still point before reorganization, holding coherence as recognition deepens. There's a moment in March where movement softens, but it's not emptiness. It's not waiting. It's not delay. It's coherence settling. Theme 6 marks the first still point. Sense your tone stabilize, a quiet, dense, unmistakable deceleration where the field pauses, not because nothing is happening, but because everything that already happened now needs to settle into structure. This is the stillness before reorganization, not stillness of confusion, not stillness of collapse, stillness of alignment gathering itself. You're not uncertain. You're not paused. You're not between steps. You're in the middle where the field must integrate recognition before the next stage of movement can begin. This is the pre-alignment hum, the soft, full, unmistakable coherence. So why this matters now? Because in the first half of March, the field shifts around you. Tone being registered, theme 1, absorption declining, theme 2, interpretation becomes more accurate, theme 3, neutrality becomes structural, theme 4, old echo loops start to lose momentum, theme 5. Each of these movements change your internal and external architecture and your relationship to the external architecture. Now the field must catch up to what is already stabilized. And the guides say recognition must deepen before alignment recognizes. But hold on. Recognition must deepen before alignment reorganizes. So that's what they say. So this is that deepening. This is the hinge point between being read and being reorganized around. Your job is not to move, your job is to hold. So how this may feel, you may notice a natural slowing, a pulling inward without collapse, a sense of something is forming, quiet body signals, not tired, just still, a decrease in output, a desire for silence, a lack of urgency, conversations feel softer, slower, emotional static drops dramatically, nothing asks for energy. It may feel like a pause, but the guides are clear. It's not a pause, it's consolidation. Nothing in your field is waiting, everything is settling. So, energetically speaking, this consolidation phase. Theme number 6 introduces one of the most harmonics of March. Theme 6 introduces one of the most important harmonics of March. Stillness is coherence, not stagnation. So you may experience a quiet internal density, not heaviness, but fullness. And you just want to make that discernment. a sense of reorganization beneath awareness, a deeper inner anchor, a less emotional reactivity, a drop in interpretive noise, a feeling that movement would disrupt what's forming. This is the field locking into the new baseline. Your tone is holding, recognition is deepening, alignment is preparing. Stillness is the sign the field is matching you. So the example for this is then the moment before the shift. Imagine standing on solid ground that was recently like poured. And so with that, it looks still, it feels still. But beneath the surface, molecules are binding, um, weight is being spread out in terms of distributing, structure is stabilizing. You tried to if you tried to move too quickly on it, you would disrupt the stability forming beneath you. So March brings that same internal moment. You're not doing nothing, you're allowing the architecture to settle. No forcing, no reaching, no trying to accelerate the next movement. So the guides say stillness is a coherence becoming structural. That's the end of the message. You're not stopping, you're being held in place long enough for the field to prepare for reorganization. So, how this then, with this, then, this theme serves the March architecture. Theme 6 is the turning point. It marks the transition form, early recognition, decreasing absorption, increasing accuracy, neutral structural stability, echo dissolution to deepen the shift into this theme 6, and then theme 7, quieting of internal noise, then theme 8, theme 9. So 6 creates the stillness required for the final 3 themes to land. It asks you, can you allow the still point to hold you? Can you trust that stillness is movement becoming internal? Can you rest in coherence without searching for direction? Can you let the field reorganize around you instead of initiating motion? So your work here is not to move. Your work is to let coherence deepen. Okay, theme number 7, more clarity in contact. Your tone is received with increasing fidelity. So you're not explaining more, you're not trying harder, you're not managing how you land. You're simply being received with more accuracy. Not fully, not perfectly, not consistently, but more clearly than before. Theme 7 brings the first month where communication begins to match your actual tone rather than the projections others once held. The distortions that once filtered your words, intentions, or presence soften. People hear you more as you actually are. The shift is subtle but unmistakable. You speak, and what you meant is closer to what is heard. This is the early stage of resonance in contact, not the peak, not the completion, the beginning. Communication becomes easier because your field is no longer reorganizing around others' emotional landscapes, and their systems no longer misread your tone through old wound filters. This is not expression, this is clarified reception. So, this is how it might feel in terms of you may notice. Conversations feel cleaner, less loaded. You don't need to over clarify. People respond to your intention, not their projection. Misunderstandings resolve more quickly. Emotional charge in exchanges declines. Others pause before assuming. They listen differently. You feel less responsible for managing the interaction. Your words land closer to your meaning. You feel less translated through someone else's history. This is not perfection, it's refinement. And the guys emphasize you're not being heard completely, you're being heard more accurately. So this is theme 7's entire movement. So energetically speaking, reduction of distortion in exchange. This theme introduces a new harmonic in March arc. Contact lands with fewer filters. So you may experience softer emotional fields in conversation, less static around your words, decreased urgency to correct misreadings, a greater ease in relational environments, cleaner energetic boundaries without effort. This does not mean everyone has the capacity for high fidelity reception, though. So just understand that and make that discernment. It does mean, though, the distortion layer is thinner, interpretation is clearer, exchange is easier in some ways. So your tone is not louder, it's simply matched more closely. So here's an example. You are in a meeting or conversation, you speak, you offer a simple truth where you once would have maybe been misunderstood, pulled into roles, interpreted through emotion, or filtered through someone's insecurity. Something different happens. Your words land, your presence settles, the exchange stays clean, no reactivity, no confusion, no over explanation, no managing in the space. The field meets you as you actually are. Not dramatically, not universally, but with enough fidelity that you feel the difference. Communication becomes resonance in communication. Communication becomes resonance, not negotiation. So that's also a discernment to make. So, how this theme kind of supports in terms of the March architecture. Theme 7 is the opening for the last part of the final arc of March. It stabilizes what earlier themes prepared and enables the movement into theme 8, softening contradiction, theme 9, field level integration. Because communication lands with more clarity, emotional noise can decrease, contradictions lessen, relational pressures dissolve, the system relaxes into coherence. So, theme 7 asks, can you allow communication to become easier without trying to make it so? Can you trust that clarity in contact is the result of stability, not performance? Can you stop filling the space where distortion used to live? Can you let reception unfold without managing how you are received? You do not create clarity, you create coherence. Clarity is its natural outcome. Theme 7 is the moment coherence becomes relational. Then we move into theme number 8 is softening contradiction. Mixed signals diminish as coherence strengthens. So you're not fixing contradiction, you're not clarifying more, you're not controlling the signal, you're simply sending fewer conflicting messages. Not because you tried to be consistent, not because you worked on your communication, not because you forced alignment, but because you stabilized tone. And that when you're stabilizing your tone, what happens is then you're no longer broadcasting essentially two realities at once because you're no longer really in that, you're lessening that aspect of mixed signals or that dual signal field. So theme 8 marks the month when then the dual signal field, which could be a mixture of soul signal and survival based signal, it begins to dissolve. Contradiction, though, does not vanish, but it softens internally and externally because the secondary survival driven signal has the aspect then to be able to lose power as coherence strengthens. So, what once felt like yes and no at the same time, move and free simultaneously. I want this, but I'm afraid of it. I'm clear inside, but foggy outside. Anybody else ever felt like that? Yeah. So now that can begin to unwind. This theme is not dramatic. It is the quiet relief that comes when competing signals stop fighting for dominance. So, why this matters now? Themes 1 through 7 create the conditions. You are becoming readable, absorptions are able to be decreased, interpretations refined, neutrality, that structural neutrality is held. Echo fields can now be weakened, the non beneficial echo fields. Stillness, consolidated coherence, and contact is clarified. Now, theme 8 emerges as structural consequence. Dual signaling cannot hold when coherence stabilizes. So, where contradiction once lived inside your field out of habit, protection, or old patterning, March brings the first month where the survival based signal no longer has the strength to compete with your stabilized tone. So that's the opportunity that March is bringing. It is up to you whether or not you accept that and you work with the human and work with the tools to support yourself in terms of that. This theme is not about perfection, it is about reduction. Reduction of confusion, reduction of oppositional energy, reduction of mixed messages. You feel what you mean and the world matches it with more consistency. So, how this might feel, you may notice less inner conflict, fewer mixed responses from others, less confusion about how to act or speak, a sense of inner and outer alignment forming, decreases in emotional volatility, less pressure to explain contradictory impulses, more consistent interactions, reduced reactivity, a gentle internal quieting. Contradiction softens not because you resolve it, but because the part of you that used to send the contradictory signal is no longer in command. You don't collapse into coherence, you settle into it. So, energetically speaking, the declining dual signal field, this theme introduces this new March harmonic. The primary signal stabilizes, the secondary signal weakens. So, you may feel old survival mechanisms loosening. So, a loosening around old survival mechanisms, a decrease in emotional static, less internal push pull, clear impulses, more direct action without hesitancy, relational spaces behaving more consistently, a sense of inner singularity emerging. This does not mean others always read you cleanly. It means they are no longer receiving possibly two different signals from you. And that alone reduces contradiction in the external field. So here's an example when mixed signal fades. Imagine you walk into an environment where previously your field says, I'm here, but I'm not sure I should be. Or I'm steady, but I'm bracing. Or I'm open, but I'm guarding. In March, humaning is such an adventure, y'all. In March, something shifts. The bracing softens, the guarding loosens, the should I, shouldn't I dissolves. You enter and you land. Others respond to the primary signal because the secondary one is loosening or maybe even barely present at this point. It depends on where you are. There's no confusion, no contradiction, no emotional cross current, just clarity where there used to be conflict. So with that, then this theme is asking, can you let contradiction soften without demanding resolution? Can you trust that dual signaling weakens through coherence, not effort? Can you stop searching for what is still wrong and feel what is no longer conflicting? Can you allow clarity to emerge instead of trying to create it? You do not eliminate contradiction, you eliminate the conditions that sustained it. Theme 8 is the moment coherence stops competing with what came before. Not loudly, not abruptly, but it's more about the steady. All right, then we move into the final theme, theme 9. So with theme 9, this is the coherence threshold, preparing the field for structural alignment. So with this, then, you're not reorganizing yet. You're not stepping into a new structure. You're not shifting reality. You're reaching the point where the field can finally align with what has stabilized. Theme 9 is the softest, most foundational threshold of March. It is not a movement, it is a recognition point. It is a recognition point, a moment when your field becomes coherent enough that the external world or the external field can begin orienting to it, not acting on it, not matching it, not reorganizing around it yet, simply knowing it. So you have to let the external field get to know get to know you, not the old you, where you are now. So theme 9 is the moment when the system says, I recognize this structure, I can align with this. So that's the external field recognizing you. It is the quiet click before April's alignment arc begins. Nothing dramatic happens here, nothing visible, nothing performative. It is an internal, external readiness meeting at the same point in the field. So, why this matters now? Everything in March has been leading to this moment. Theme 1, your tone becomes readable. Theme 2, absorption declines. Theme 3, interpretation refines. Theme 4, your neutral structural stability emerges. Theme 5, non-beneficial echo fields weaken. Theme 6, coherence consolidates. Theme 7, contact clarifies. Theme 8, contradiction softens. Theme 9 is the culmination. The field can now recognize your structure with enough fidelity. That alignment becomes possible. That's what we're moving into in April. This is not alignment itself. This is pre-alignment lock. The moment a system identifies a stable reference point and quietly orients toward it. You feel this not as expansion, but as readiness. And the guys share alignment requires recognition. Recognition requires stability. March completes the sequence. So, how this might feel. You may notice a soft internal yes without knowing the details, a sense of placement. I know where I am now. External environments feeling less oppositional, a quiet inner readiness without urgency, a sense that April is already moving toward you, less doubt about your direction, increasing coherence in your choices, a soft calm in the body, a sense of inevitability ugh, without force, the inevitable without force. Above all, you may feel something is about to shift and I don't need to make it happen. That's a relief, right? Taking the burden off the human. This is the coherence threshold. And energetically speaking, it's the pre alignment lock. Theme 9 introduces that final March harmonic. The field recognizes enough of your tone, right? To begin aligning with it. So it's not fully, it's not instantly, it's not in visible ways. You may experience internal stabilization without effort, relational environments meeting you with more consistency, fewer disruptions, a sense of the field holding its shape, decreased energetic noise, the beginning of structural predictability, a foundational calm entering the system. This is not the reorganization. This is the permission slip for reorganization. The field understands your stabilized configuration and can now respond to it. So this is your field is your personal field and then the external field. And then here's an example, like the moment before alignment. Imagine a puzzle piece being placed near its position. It doesn't click in yet, but it's in its right orientation in the right place with the right relationship to its surroundings. Theme 9 feels like that. You fit, you're recognized more. The structure around you knows how to receive you. Alignment is not happening yet, but it is now possible for the first time. Nothing loud, nothing decisive, just a quiet rightness settling through the field. You do nothing, your coherence creates the opening, which is why in the Meditate With Me, we have been doing a ton of energy meditations regarding coherence. See how that all leads us up to where we're going, right? They all come together to work for us. So with that then, how this theme serves the March architecture. Theme 9 completes the March arc and sets the stage for April's alignment phase because the field now recognizes your structure. Alignment becomes viable. Reorganization can occur without distortion. Direction clarifies without effort. April can now move into alignment rather than preparation. Structure becomes a reference point, not an emotion or survival. But I'm just going to say, though, in regard to this, you also have to recognize, though, in terms of the human, there is a lot of clearing and shifting and recalibration. So this really isn't any kind of absolutist. There's things with the human where things may be coming up now, but something may come up in a year. So your alignment can become viable, but then in a year now from now, something might need to be cleared. It's just we're multidimensional, and so that's where you just have to understand that you might be processing this energy forecast now, but in a year you might also have something come up in regard to this energy forecast. So that's where you have to understand multidimensional beingness and how to use the tools when, and then also just not take anything as absolutists in regarding to this humaning experience, and also in regard to then your light and physical form and connection to your soul. And that's why the importance of the tool work is there as well. All right, theme number 7. I mean, sorry, not theme set number 7. Theme number 9. Theme number 9 asks, and this is going to be the closing out of the theme. Can you allow the coherence threshold to be enough? Can you trust that recognition is the essential precursor to alignment? Can you stop searching for evidence and feel that structural shift? Can you rest in readiness instead of reaching for movement? So you don't create alignment, you don't create coherence, and alignment becomes possible because coherence holds. So theme 9 is the moment the field says, I know you and I can meet you. And by the field, it's the external field we're talking about, right? So you do have your personal field, but then there's also an external field. So the external field says, I know you, I can meet you. Not loudly, not dramatically, but it is undeniable. So you're not emerging and you're not projecting and you're not clarifying your signal. You are being recognized. You're being recognized by the outer field. You are the tone held long enough for the world to hear it. You are the field stabilized enough for the world to register it. You are the coherence quiet enough that distortion can no longer speak louder than your light truth. This is not revelation, this is recognition. This is you being registered and recognized. So, this is the moment when your architecture becomes perceptible, not fully, not universally, not consistently yet, but more accurately enough that the field begins learning you. And by the field, we're talking about the external field. You're not speaking into the world is listening into you. You're not shaping experience. Experience is beginning to shape around your stabilized form. There is no demand here. There's no amplification. There's no correction. Only coherence becomes legible. You are the quiet that reorganizes perception. You are the stabilized tone the field no longer misreads. You are the architecture that is now unmistakable. Let all over explaining dissolve. Let all self translation fall. Let all habits of managing your reception drop. You're not being decoded, you're being read. You're not you're not striving for alignment. You are reading the threshold where alignment becomes possible. And so this is the month where contradiction softens, echo, non-beneficial echo fields fade, absorption declines, interpretation refines, and stillness deepens enough for coherence to be recognized. This is the threshold between internal light truth and external response. You're not the process. You are in terms of allowing the coherence that the world is then learning. So just know that you're not finding your field. Your field is becoming unmistakable itself. Your field is becoming unmistakably itself. Let the system settle, let the tone speak, let the recognition land. And so the guides are also going to be sealing this light transmission and the harmonic fidelity of, in regard to the Oversoul Council, in regard to the connection to stabilized tone, and you are working with your own soul, Oversoul, that will support you as well. Not to hold you in place, but to hold you in recognition. No mimicry, no noise, no competing signals. Only the stabilized resonance of what has become true. You're not preparing for alignment. You are the coherence alignment moves toward. You're not stepping into the threshold. You are the threshold. Recognition is not arriving, it is unfolding from within you. The field is not learning your light, it is remembering it. This is March. This is coherence threshold. This is the moment before the architecture moves. So, with that, this light transmission is complete. Recognition stabilized, threshold form. And so, with that, then I'm going to be moving into the dowsing. And before that, though, I just want to thank everyone in the public in terms of the Inspiring You YouTube as well as the Inspiring You podcast in terms of the public forum. Thanking you for joining, and as well as anybody in the Inspiring You Patreon. But for the all access members, we're going to be going into doing a dowsing now. So thank you to everyone for joining me for the March 2026 energy forecast. And just remember, March is not a month of movement. It is a month of recognition. It is a month of registration. It is the month of registration. Your field becomes readable. Your tone becomes registerable. Your neutrality becomes structural. Your contradiction softens. Your internal noise declines. Your stabilization becomes perceptible. This is the month where the world begins shifting toward you, not because you call it, but because coherence calls recognition and is being able to be registered. So, with that, if you're listening to the public version, thank you for arriving at this threshold. March asks only one thing of you: to stay coherent long enough to be recognized. You do not need to show who you are. You do not need to convince or clarify. You do not need to manage your reception. Your signal is enough. And by signal, we're talking about soul signal, right? Your tone is readable. Your coherence is the architecture the world now learns. April's alignment arc will not ask you to perform, it will ask you to allow. And for those of you staying on for the Dowsing Energy Healing session, this month's recalibration, it will support clarifying, it will support preparing, it will also remove any kind of distortion so the field can read the tone fully. So I'm going to say then we're going to begin this full Dowsing Energy session for March 2026, which is available exclusively to all access members and paid to the all access members in the Inspiring You Patreon. So if you feel called to receive this or do this, or however you want to word it, this support, then please check out the link in the show notes that can connect you to how to become part of this. And again, to anyone in the public space, may your field be recognized gently. May your tone be read without distortion. May your coherence hold without effort. You are the threshold. You are the reference point. You are the signal the world can now learn. And we are not beginning again. We're stepping into that recognition. So with that, then we are complete. Thank you so much for joining me, everyone in the public. And I'm going to move on to the dowsing. Much, much love. Until soon, and stay inspired.